Yo, it's crazy. Something is wrong with the fucking PlayStation network, and it won't let me pull up the PlayStation app. And without the PlayStation app, I can't turn this fucking music off. Oh my god, I don't know why PlayStation did that shit like that, yo. I can't fucking turn this music off, yo. It's so annoying. I keep trying to connect to the network too. That shit is not going through. Alright, so I can't get connected to the server right now. I don't know. This is fucking weird. I hate when this shit happens with PlayStation. Mm.
Connected to icon. Connected to Galaxy Tab A2016.
Jazz. Yo, that's the fucking PlayStation doing that, bro. I can't turn that shit off, man. I'm trying to turn that shit off now, bro. I swear. Alright, I think it's loading up. The fucking PlayStation app is coming up now. Please connect this fucking time, yo. This shit would not connect just now. Thank God. Alright, I can turn this shit off. Please connect to the This shit is playing so fucking hard, yo. Like, really? Sony? Wow, this shit is playing some fucking type of game with me, yo. Like, it just said it was connecting, then it didn't connect. What up, guys? Mr. T, good morning. Out there, I call this motherfucker Mr. T, man, Mr. L. Please connect. Thank you. Oh, shit. Oh, and it popped up. I'm connected to the app. Yo, that shit would not go through, man. I've been sitting here trying this shit. I tried that shit like 15 times just now. Second screen. About fucking time. Maybe that's my future self. Yeah. What? Yeah. I finished reading that article. I like to read shit first before I hear a motherfucker tell that shit to me. Just when people just tell me shit, it just sound funny the first time. Let me read that shit. Let me read the words before I hear them come out of your mouth. Because as soon as I hear people talk, I hear bullshit. If I can read it first, it make a little bit more sense before I hear the bullshit. But yeah. So I read that article. It was a NBC article, so it came from the major news media. But it was like, oh, this fear stems from a YouTube video that was blown dramatically out of proportion. The test that we're going to engage in will have some effect on communications and the communication grid, but it's not going to impact. Why is it disconnecting? Oh my fucking God. Is it cloudy outside or something? It is kind of overcast a little bit, but damn, is my Wi-Fi signal that fucking terrible? I cannot operate the fucking PlayStation app. I can't turn this fucking music off. I can't flip the camera around. It won't let me do shit for some reason. Thank fucking God. Holy shit. That only took like 15 minutes for me to do that. For me to turn that music off and flip the fucking camera around. I don't know what was wrong with this fucking app and my Wi-Fi just now, but that shit did not want to stay connected. Yo, that app turned off over and over and over and over and over again. So now, yo, my man Mr. T put me up on some shit last night, yo. The fucking that's the, that's the EMP early stage drills, yo. That shit kicking everything out. They already started that shit up, yo. Just like HAARP, son. This dude tripping, yo. It's the EMP something. I tell you, man. Trap, yo. Look this shit up, Trap. So I'll show you the article that I did read. I think it was like one of the first ones. Alright, so at the time when I read it, it was it said the article was only out for 15 hours. That was the newest one, so that's the first one I went to. There's another article out about it now that came out a little while ago. Now this article says it was 21 hours ago. Fox News 6.com. So will the Department of Defense EMP drill shut down our power grid? No. Period. The video that falsely claims that the Department of Defense, the DoD, communications drill will cause a national power grid to go out for several days in early November is causing panic on social media. The video warns the Department of Defense will be using an electromagnetic pulse to shut down the power grid November 4th through 6th, and that everyone needs to prepare now. While a training exercise is happening during that time period, the outcome has been exaggerated by false reports being shared on social media. The official DoD announcement about the planned exercise states, quote, "This exercise will begin with a national massive coronal mass ejection event which will impact the national power grid as well as all forms of traditional communications, including landline, telephone, cell phones, satellite, and internet connectivity." This comes from Army Mars Program Manager Paul English. During the exercise, the national power grid will not be impacted. Most social media reports referring to the announcement do not mention that the exercise is a simulation and will have no real life impact. The average citizen will not even know this exercise is taking place. Our focus is to interpret with an amateur radio community. Let me see. No, amateur. With the amateur radio community, English says, routine communications. Where am I at? Um, Training happens 4 times each year and involves various divisions of Department of Defense along with amateur radio operators and Mars organizations. During the first week of November, these entities will come together to train under a simulated very bad day scenario, quote unquote, very bad day. Like a very bad day is an event in which the national power grid fails along with other forms of communication, including landline, cell phone, satellites, and internet connectivity. They are also preparing, this is the part that I found interesting, will also be preparing a solar storm scenario, but that too will be simulation. The purpose of the training is to prepare for an event we hope will never happen, but should be ready for if it does, says the Army Military Auxiliary Radio System, MARS. These exercises are all about coordinating existing capabilities like amateur radio and citizen volunteers like MARS members to be a productive part of a solution in an event, something like this, like a very severe solar storm ever happens. The date of the training exercise coincides with rumors Day of Rage protests for Antifa groups on November 4th, according to Snopes. The Army Military Auxiliary Radio Systems posted about the exercise on October the 25th. In response to the rumors on social media, the page the page added a comment to the post to provide some clarity to dispel rumors. Thanks everyone for speaking out on this. We are glad you are using our social media to express some questions and concerns about COMEX 17-4, and I hope I will clear up some of the misconceptions and rumors. It is an exercise. In this exercise, amateur radio operators are coordinated with routine training that we do 4 times a year. The purpose of the training is to prepare for an event we hope will never happen, but we should be prepared. Exercise. This is basically saying the same thing over and over. To answer one of the questions, yes, we will try to talk to amateur radio operators in all 3,000 countries, 3,000 plus countries in the 3,000 plus counties in the United States. We hope all amateur radio operators will help us with that by turning into 60-meter channel on Saturday night. Date time noted ARRL bulletin above. So I don't know. Like it just goes on and on about like it's just a radio exercise and just in case, you know. But who fucking knows what's gonna happen, with this shit. Luffing stuff. Okay. My man Boozy. So now that's the only article I've read about it. So let's see if we can find a news report and listen to what some analyst has to say, the specialist. Alright, this is the truth about the EMP blackout November 4th through the 16th. This was 18 hours ago, but it's only 56 seconds long. Let's see what this says in less than under a minute.
Assalamu alaikum family, this is your brother. The drill, which is going to be conducted between November.
This dude put up audio video with audio cutting out. Like, that's not good. Alright, this right here says big lights out drill planned for November. Alright, so I see a news anchor from Fox News. Fox. Okay. Electromagnetic pulse EMP drill November 4th through 6th. Let's see what Fox says.
Alright, y'all, I ain't one to fear monger, but you should be.
Why is my audio cutting out like that?
Higher. Get right.
Talking about entire cities in the U.S. It seems.
This is weird. Like, my audio is. What the fuck is that shit?
Massive enough, scary enough. And the bottom line is that the aim of.
Alright, y'all, I ain't one to fear monger, but you should be prepared. Water, food, protection, and with God. Higher. Get right. On November 4th, the Department of Defense is going to be doing an EMP drill.
Is talking about a powerful electromagnetic pulse that they say could knock out entire cities in the U.S. It seems to me the stakes have gotten higher when this is not just a hydrogen bomb, which is massive enough, scary enough, but when you walk through this, what exactly is an EMP? It's the burst of radiation when a nuclear weapon is detonated above the Earth. No blast felt on Earth, but the electromagnetic fields still reach the surface. And the bottom line is that the aim of this is to knock out power in much of the U.S. And the claim from experts is that outages could last for months, affecting hospitals, emergency services, food, and water. Talk to us a little bit about this, Dave, of the notion that this kind of electromagnetic attack could go beyond just taking out lives. It could be taking out our electric grid as well.
Man, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna go get some more water right now. Right now. Another thing y'all gotta consider is that Antifa has a whole bunch of events planned for this weekend on the 4th as well. So you combine that with the potential power outage and all that going on, things could get nasty.
No, absolutely. Electromagnetic pulse is a real thing, and so it's a high altitude detonation of a nuclear weapon could cause that, amongst other things, right? And it would be absolutely devastating if it was over a certain area, depending, especially large city centers or areas like that are dependent upon those things, and it shuts down all sorts of things, including our financial systems. The impacts would be global, massively global.
Now, if you know anything about drills, there's usually something real that happens during a drill. Look back at the previous events that have happened recently. Get yourself right, fill up your gas tanks, stock up on any canned goods, connect with some relatives of yours that are out of the metro area, out of the urban areas, and get ready to move if we got to. I'm not trying to freak you out, but you should be ready. Always. Not even for November 4th. You should just be ready, period. At any time. The country is unstable. Train, teach your kids, take them out in the woods, show them a couple of survival skills, how to tie knots, how to light fires, how to hunt.
See, that's the thing. That's like shit like this is weird to me. Like when you hear shit like this, but that's the motto to live by. You know what I'm saying? Always expect the best, but always prepare for the worst. Get water. I got water. Canned goods. I got canned goods, bro. Just my shit. I can go for a couple weeks without going to the grocery store. You know what I'm saying? They talking about some months though. That's some different shit. That's when you gotta, and it's about to be wintertime too. Can't really grow no garden in the wintertime where I'm at. Fuck, you need a greenhouse or some shit. But at the same time, I got people who don't live in urban areas who got acres of land. I got a little piece of land in South Carolina too. You know what I'm saying? It's just like that. You just don't wait for this shit to happen. Don't ever wait for this shit to hit the fans. That's why when I hear news like this, trust me, I've been doing this shit for like 12 years, 13 years, man. I've been up on it. And I've been slow, and I'm still slow at doing a lot of shit, but just do it. Slow money better than no money. You ain't gotta go out and buy you motherfucking, $6,000 worth of solar panels and a fucking $1,200 generator. You ain't gotta do all that shit all at one time. You ain't gotta go out and buy fucking 3 and 4 guns and all that shit at one time, man. Slow. Build that shit up. Cause you just never know. You know what I'm saying? So shit, over the years, I just been getting shit. And when I get it, it just seems like, oh, I don't need that right now. Yeah, I don't need it right now. But you never know when you might need that shit. You never know when that shit gonna come in handy. I eat these paintings. Shit, man, I got. What up, Muhammad? Down. Fox. But yeah, just being prepared, man. Just little shit, man. Y'all see little shit, some survival shit. Pick that shit up whenever you see it. Just a couple dollars here, spend a couple dollars a day. Couple dollars here, couple dollars a day. You know what I'm saying? They really fucked the black community up with all these fucking felonies and shit. They hit all my peoples with for little drug charges and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? That's how they really got us in the fucking 90s and the 2000s and shit. But they've been doing that shit since the 70s and 80s. But like a lot of motherfuckers I know, man, who used to sell dope and shit back in the day, got some little charges here and there. Motherfuckers can't own guns legally. And I look at the system of how that shit work, but that's designed. It's designed that way, yo. For a young man, 15 or 16, to get his ass caught up in the system with some trumped up bullshit ass charges and toss his ass a fucking harsh ass misdemeanor or a felony, this motherfucker can't never own a gun. Can't never own no gun. You know what I'm saying? You'll be defenseless for the rest of your fucking life. Legally, you will be defenseless for the rest of your life. And if you get caught with a firearm for protection, they gonna put your ass back in the system. Now you a slave. But even shit like that, weapons and shit, man. Food, seeds, water, canned goods. You can get motherfucking. If you ever see military rations, buy that shit. Why? Just little brown bags of what the fuck is in it? Buy it. I know I was at the flea market a couple months ago. Old white dude out there selling rations. Military, good for 20 years. Word. And they ain't even half the shelf life yet. That shit probably still had sit on the shelf for like 17 years. How much you selling them for? $10 for the box? Let me get that. Let me get these rations. Have these shits for 15 years from now, just in case anything happens. Where I need to feed myself. You know what I'm saying? And it ain't really prepping. It ain't, like I say, man, I ain't digging no bomb shelters and making no motherfucking armored buses and shit like that and secluding myself off in the hills. You know what I'm saying? But if you got a fucking some kind of plan together, yo, It's even fucked up that we got to think about that in this day and age, but we got to think about that. All right, this guy right here says 17 misconceptions about the effects of an EMP pulse.
I like to do things the hard way. I like to figure things out as I go. I put my best foot forward in all that I do.
November 4th is coming. Are you ready? Are you ready for what's going to happen on November 4th? Antifa is going to be protesting in major cities all over the place, and at the same time, the Department of Defense is going to do an exercise simulating a massive EMP or CME grid down situation. We're going to talk about that in this video. Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. Boy, there's a lot of stuff on the internet about the 4th coming up. Today's what, the 1st of November? And I thought I'd address that with y'all a little bit. I guess Antifa, the anti-fascist, Antifa, whatever the heck their name is. I guess they're planning to do a bunch of demonstrations. What do I think about that? Not much. I mean, I live out here. Don't think we're gonna have a lot of Antifa protesters out here.
That's what I say, yo. The people with the land, they don't give a fuck about that shit. The real purpose, man, motherfucker.
If you live in
he in the woods. Look where you live at.
What to do? What to do? Well, avoid the crowds. If there are a big protest going on, if you see people dressed in black.
It's good because, like I said, I got some people who live just like that too, yo. In the motherfucker woods, live in a place where if you ain't never been there, you ain't gonna get there. You just don't know where it's at. You know what I'm saying? Motherfucker had to have taken you there before to know where it's at. And shit, I know a couple places like that, yo. So when shit hit the fans, yo, I'm on my way. I'm already en route. I'm in motion now. I'll be there in a little while. Yeah. Oh, I got all my shit. I got that. I see you in a little bit. And that's how it's gonna be. And I'm gonna roll out, yo. Fuck that. Cause I know motherfuckers who live just like that in the woods. So let's see what the pastor. It's hard for me to listen to religious people because religious people already have a certain view on everything through their religion. So there's that. Yeah, there's tons of videos on this. Like everybody is talking about this shit. This, yo, King, only freestyle for the King. What up, bro?
Black hoodies and stuff across their face. Go somewhere else. What a concept. If you get caught in it, move laterally from the direction of the crowd, and get off the line of attack. And don't look like them and try and get behind the police lines and keep going. If there's going to be trouble, don't be there, right? Pretty simple. Not too worried, not too concerned about Antifa. And honestly, I don't think it's going to amount to much. I think there'll end up being more press people there than actual, protesters and stuff. And the cops, the police, the authorities have known about it long enough. Ain't nothing bad going to happen with Antifa. The DOD drill, simulating, grid down, whether that's from CME, EMP. There's a lot of people on the net saying, oh my goodness, it's all coming down. My wife and I laugh every time somebody sets a date for the end of the world and we know it's not going to happen. We always say, well, when's the next one going to be? I mean, when was the last one before the 4th? That was it the eclipse? Or maybe Sukkot after the eclipse? Whatever. There'll be another date set. Y'all watch. After November 4th comes and goes with no problem, people will set another date because they like to be amped up, man. Let's go! There is a disturbing series of coincidences. I don't believe in coincidences. Surrounding exercises. You know, during 9/11, there was an exercise going on simulating a very similar scenario. Evidently, during the Boston Marathon bombing, there was an exercise going on simulating something similar, and on and on and on. And so, yeah, hey, you know, reading the tea leaves and saying, let's be ready for a grid down thing, or maybe they're really going to pull the plug while they're doing the exercise. Man,
they were doing the exercise too, yeah.
Could it happen? Sure, it could happen. Do I think it's going to happen? I do not. But I do say this. At any given time, we are 72 hours away from chaos. From a myriad of different means that are possible for happening. Any given time, from right now, while you're sitting there eating Doritos and drinking a Coke and watching this video, 72 hours from now, your life could be totally different.
If I was eating Doritos and drinking a Coke, that shit really would have fucked me up.
And so we don't really need to pick certain things to get all keyed up about. We just have to constantly, steadily prepare. And later on today, I'm going to shoot a video for Patreon, on my Patreon account, on what one can do, honestly do, to prepare for an EMP, coronal mass ejection, grid down circuits fried type situation. If you're interested in that, I'll put a link down below to my Patreon site. And but yeah, as far as this 4th coming up, hey guys, avoid any crowds that you see. It's a good thing to avoid crowds anyway, right? Yeah, you know, the bike crowd in Manhattan, that's a terrible thing. It's the way of the world. It's the way things are. It's becoming the new normal. Try to get out away from the people. All right. Hey, don't worry. November 4th is going to come and go, and we'll still be here. All right. I'll see you out there.
Yo, is that a passage just telling you to avoid people? Yo, the preacher said avoid people. That's the way of the world, folks.
Hey guys, it's 8:30 p.m. on October 27th.
You don't want to be around people anymore. The world is not coming to an end because everyone always predicting dates, and me and my wife laugh and say, when is the next one gonna be? That's kind of sad. Already got that shit ready. Man, got Vancouver, British Columbia up in here. What up, Pass?
In order for us to be in the state that we are in today as people, we have to be out of our minds. We literally have to be crazy. It is necessary for us to be crazy. It is necessary for us to be backwards. It is necessary for us to be maladjusted. It is necessary for us to be disunited. It is necessary for us to be self-hating. It is necessary for us to be filled with an inferiority complex. In a world where the European is essentially about 10% of the world's population, if that 10% is to continue to rule over the other 90%, it must keep that 90% out of its mind. It must keep that 90% in a state of deception. It must keep that 90% filled with a feeling of powerlessness and incompetence. If this 10% is to continue to consume more than 60% of the world's resources, if this 10% is to continue to rob African, Asian, and other nations of their material wealth, then it must keep those people in a state of maladjustment.
Fuck these straight lines. This is why
and this implies then that no matter how much integration you may bring about, the feeling of inferiority must be a constant in the black personality. No matter how many people you run for president, No matter how many mayors you get elected, no matter how many people you get on the board of IBM and the others, the basic sense of inferiority, the basic sense of dependency must remain a constant in the black mind. And I will indicate this, and I think this study, which occurred now some 40 years later, shows this to be the case. Dr. Clark shows surprise that after all of this time, this feeling is still there. I would not, and I don't think any student who's basically looked at the necessity of black people being out of their minds as being the foundation of European dominance would not be surprised. I think it was quite predictable. Remember, these children have this feeling of inferiority basically from the end of their second years. You can pick up this sense of inferiority as early as 3.5 years old. So it starts very early. And I'm still working through my mind the implications of that finding. We are talking about preschool children, not only children that are in school, but children who are having this feeling prior to school. This would, of course, indicate that, to a degree, that our environment is saturated with racism through TV, through the various media, through the pictures our walls, through the unconscious and conscious state, and influence the child's behavior and attitude starting in the womb itself. And I often start my developmental classes not with the prenatal period and how egg meets sperm, but with why do you have children in the first place? Because the reasons you have children will influence their development. It will influence them from the time they're in your womb until, of course, the day they die upon this earth. It would indicate then that to a degree and in some way the black community itself has been induced in helping to bring about a feeling of inferiority in its children. To a good extent, it is not so much the actions of racism that destroy us. The discrimination by white folk and Europeans, the kind of hatred that they express toward us as people that destroys us and gives us an inferiority complex. It is to a good degree how we as people react to these actions. Whether we believe the propaganda or not, whether we believe what the European actually has said. We cannot often control the behavior of other people, but we do have a greater control over how we react to that behavior. And to a good extent, the challenge of an Afrocentric education is to educate us in our tendencies to react. To a good extent, it would mean that the actions of racism apparently have induced some of us to accept racist propaganda and to really believe it, to internalize it. Once we internalize the propaganda, then we become social agents for the racists themselves. And to a good extent, then, the black family, once it internalizes the propaganda of Eurocentric racist, becomes a social agent for the racists and begins to produce the kinds of children that the racists want from the time of conception onward. It becomes instructive, you see, to look at a family not as something that just raises children, but a family to a good extent is the social agent of the society. It produces the kinds of children that the society says it needs and wants. The family looks out at the opportunity structure, at its own social position. It looks out at what it views as the future for its children, for its group, for its nation, and it inculcates those views into its children and rears its children in terms of those views, sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously. And in that way, it begins to create the children for the society. In a heavily segregated society, for instance, if your black boy or girl would have said some years ago that they wanted to be president of the United States, or that they were going to be president of the United States, how many of us, by being realistic, would have discouraged that view? You know, ain't no black man going to be this, or no black woman going to be that. Be real. And in the service of being real, by saying, well, I don't want him to be disappointed. I want to save him from racism and save him from the recognition one day that there are limitations to his aspirations. We quietly steer them toward a trade or a skill. Get this and get a job. So what's happening there? While it may have a realistic basis in a certain sort of way, you are also at the same time, though, creating the child's aspirations. You're also creating the child's motivations. You're creating the child's view of itself in line with the way the society is structured. A true Afrocentric family not only relates to its children in terms of reality, but it relates to its children in terms of idealism. It relates in the sense that there is a world that it is an African family and we as an African people want to bring about. While the black man may not be president of the United States, it does not mean that he cannot rule the world. The true Afrocentric family then not only raises its children in terms of the so-called social realities, because it recognizes that social realities are things that men create themselves. And therefore it raises children to create a reality suitable to the advancement and development of black people. But an unconscious black family, an unconscious people, a people who fallen victim to racism, a people who fallen victim to a sense of inferiority, then will produce the kind of inferior children that the white society needs to continue its dominance in the world. And in this way, then, the black family and the black community and black leadership becomes allied with the dominant group and with the Eurocentric group. It is this kind of thing that we must come to become conscious of and to defeat consciously. I'm going to give you a little taste of what I'm writing about in my current book. I want to indicate that black maladjustment is not just a suffering in the soul of black people. It's not just a feeling of inferiority in which over which the individual has to get. It's not just a feeling of alienation that you get over by going to a therapist, that you get over by attending various therapeutic sessions. Black maladjustment is functionally necessary for the world as it is currently constituted. Black maladjustment is a political factor, and I often try to get across to people the understanding that when we go to these universities and these schools, one of the greatest deceptions that's run upon us is the idea that the things that we are taught in these schools are non-political, that they are neutral, that they are somehow universal. And of course, the whites run a beautiful game on us when they, for instance, name their courses without putting their ethnicity in front of them. They don't say white psychology, white education, white economics, white physics, white chemistry, you know. And we often naively then assume because they're called economics, psychology, anthropology, that means we are in a course that has general and universal meanings. And we are made to think that we are odd when we call a course Black Studies, that there's something wrong with it. But every course in the American college and university and in the American educational establishment is a course in white studies, ladies and gentlemen. And every course in every discipline is designed for essentially the same thing, to maintain white dominance. We must be very conscious of that. And we must recognize that a major part of the education of our children and of ourselves is the fact that we have to politicize the courses that we're taking, even science, even physics and chemistry. So a lot of people think, well, you know, we're talking about atoms and molecules and this and that, and they have no ethnicity and they have no politics. In a fundamental way, you may be right, but on another level, there's a problem with that. Scientific thinking and technological development does not just develop in the head of some genius. It's not the result of some scientific genius who happened to strike upon some major discovery. Scientific discovery and technological development take place within a political social structure. You have to have a political system, a system of social relations, an economic system in order that science and technology develop and flourish. They do not flourish in a vacuum. Therefore, it is not enough just to teach your children physics and chemistry. You must teach them the politics of physics and chemistry. You must teach them the economics of physics and chemistry. You must teach them how a system must organize itself politically and socially such that physical and chemical research take place. It is not enough for us to educate African boys and girls.
Is this motherfucking deep or what? You know what I'm saying? You can't deny what the fuck my man be saying, yo. Even chemistry is political. How do fucking advancements in science and technology take place? It takes place in a societal system where there is economic backing to help somebody create this shit, yo. No, this is Dr. Amos Wilson.
In science and technology, so that African can catch up with the Europeans. You will never catch up with the European just by knowing science and technology. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you have to finance technological research. You have to pay scientists to do research. People just don't do research for nothing. If you run the latest physics experiment, you would have to produce a cyclotron with a circumference of some 20 or 30 miles around that costs billions of dollars. And if you're then talking about catching up with the European scientifically, then you must catch up with the European and surpass him, what? Economically. If your children are to work for you and give their scientific genius to the advancement of black people, then we as black people must give them an economic, social, and political foundation in which their gifts can be realized and handed over to us as a people. And therefore, merely to teach chemistry and physics as some neutral subject, as some body of knowledge unrelated to everything else going on into the world, is to be miseducated. That is one of the reasons why we have a country filled, as black people, with chemists, with engineers, machinists, and yet we don't seem to be able to export one gun to South Africa. We don't seem to be able to make one bomb. We have generals and sergeants and green berets and rangers and all of the rest, and yet we are unable to train one guerrilla or anything else to fight for their liberation in this world because there's a lack of social organization. It is not enough just to have knowledge. It is not enough just to have money. Money and knowledge must be organized in order to be effective. And
can you imagine that? What if a group of black corporate professionals got together and said, "Yo, we gonna start our own gun manufacturing company"? Can you imagine the fucking red tape the federal government put these motherfuckers through? Imagine that shit. Just 12 black guys, well-to-do business owners. Maybe they've been in real estate or banking or investments or, started a hedge fund or, property owner in restaurants or something. But it's like, you know what? We all got money and shit. let's come together and do a brand new business venture. Let's start making our own guns. You know what I'm saying? A black-owned gun company. Can you imagine them just having like no problem? Like, yeah, sure, guys, go ahead. Where are you gonna sell your guns to? Oh, we're gonna sell our guns Africa. Gonna sell all our guns to Africans. I don't think we're gonna give you guys a permit for that, cause only white people get to make guns. Yeah. So if you're not like Russian or German or English or American, white American, we're not gonna let you make guns. I don't think so. But yeah, just imagine some shit like that. But this is the power structure that we talk about here, you know what I'm saying? This is the power structure that we have to deal with. It's all about power.
Knowledge, in order to flourish and be actualized in some concrete advancement for people, must be based ultimately on social relations between those people. So there must be a social structure. And while your children are learning science and mathematics, they must learn to love themselves and to love one another and to cooperate one with the other. Or else they'll have an Afrocentric mind, but they will still have to go down to IBM and Xerox and do their work. And ultimately then, they will still be racked by a sense of inferiority and dependency. So we must keep that in mind. Let me quickly state here then that the sense of inferiority in black people and the other problem we talk about will not be removed by assimilation. They will not be removed by integration. They will not be removed by Jesse Jackson being elected president of the United States. They will not be removed by the election of other black politicians. And that doesn't say that Jesse Jackson shouldn't be elected, and it doesn't say that other politicians should not be elected. I'm saying, though, we cannot look at those things as being the sole basis for removing and solving the kinds of problems that we have. Because maladjustment is not merely a malady of the individual personality.
Now that's back in the early 90s when Jesse was talking about running for president and shit. You know what I'm saying? And like he was saying, it was like, yo, that's all good, you know. Y'all want to vote for a black man to be president? I ain't got no problem with that. But don't think because if this motherfucker get elected that everything is all good now just because a black man the president. That shit don't solve shit. He's like that ain't the end all be all answer to our fucking problems. Period. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's what tripped me out when Obama got in office. And this dude ain't even all the way black. He's mulatto. He's biracial. He's mixed. They never want to call him that, even though they say, well, his mom is white, but he's a black man. Like, no. And then for two, like, niggas really thought like the world was gonna change. Like, there's no more racism and we're going to get out 40 acres and a mule because the black man is in office. Like, get the fuck out of here. This shit is just solidifying the white power structure more. The white man, the elite is telling you, like, look, niggas, this is how tough we is. We going to give y'all a black president and show y'all it don't make a difference. You know what I'm saying? Y'all better try to scramble and get whatever good feelings y'all want right now. And now Obama's out of office. They like, see, black people, we gave y'all a black president. Y'all was unable to accomplish anything. Y'all still in the ghettos. Y'all still thugging and bugging. And y'all still live in the hood and shit. And see, black presidents don't change shit. So that was y'all worst shot. Don't ask for that shit ever again. You know what I'm saying? Y'all might as well forget y'all reparations. Because if y'all really wanted reparations, the black president would have gave it to you. And if a black man don't think that black people need reparations, then why the fuck is anybody else going to give it to y'all? So y'all need to sit down and shut the fuck up. From here on out, the only thing we're going to talk about is illegal immigration and gay rights. And if transgenders can use the same bathrooms or not. That's the only thing that's important now. Your whole little struggle, that shit is done. You're done, black people. Stop crying. Stop bitching, nigga.
Maladjustment is functional for a system. That system sometimes can be a family. Do you know sometimes a family is held together by a sick person? It is a scapegoat, a quote-unquote black sheep around which the family defines itself. Sometimes a husband and wife keep a relationship because one of them is sick. And when one goes to the psychiatrist somewhere and try to get better, decide that they're going to change their life, the relationship breaks up. And often families will subtly pull a member back into alcoholism and other kinds of problems as a way of maintaining itself, even though it may be claiming aloud that it's really concerned with getting the person well. Because often the sickness of one individual works to the advantage of another one. And I will say then, when you see a society producing a lot of illness, the illness must be functional for that society. The sick people must be playing a very valuable role in that system. In other words, people don't drive you crazy for nothing. There's some benefit involved. Let me read this section then. The question that often goes unasked or unanswered from a general theoretical point of view is one that's asked, what familial societal role is played by the maladjusted personality? Why are we sick and why do we have the inferiority complex that we have as people? If the maladjusted personality is created and maintained.
All right, I'm reading this shit. Grace, what's up? And this is why I say, yo, Dr. Amos Wilson, man, if you listen to him, if you read his material, I swear, out of everybody that all the intellectuals, because I'm a fucking high school dropout. I don't ever claim to be smarter than nobody, more intelligent than I don't doubt anybody's intelligence, because I ain't even make it out of fucking high school. You feel me? I got my GED and shit. I scored real high on the GED test. But does that make me smarter than anybody else? Nah, you know what I'm saying? I made a bunch of dumbass choices and decisions just like a lot of other people. You know what I'm saying? But so in my quest for knowledge, I'm really skeptical and listening to other people too. You know what I'm saying? I listen to everybody. I try to listen to everybody's viewpoint. I don't listen to tons and tons of talks from white supremacists just to understand how they feel. And on many levels, I agree with what the fuck a lot of white supremacists say. It's all about power. We have power. We like power. We don't want to give it up. And that would be the same thing for any group of people in control. Like, you wouldn't want to give up your power. And I understand that shit. But in my quest for knowledge, like I say, because I don't know everything, so I try to listen to smart people. All right, you wrote essays and papers and articles and books and journals on different topics. All right, I'm not a fucking economic specialist. So when I want to know about the economy, I listen to somebody who has supposedly, degrees in economy and all this other stuff. I'm not a fucking psychologist. So when I want to learn about psychology and how the mind works, I listen to people who do have fucking degrees in that field. You know what I'm saying? And it's simple as that. But once again, when I listen to people, you got to understand the difference between facts and opinions. Everybody gonna give you facts and opinions. You know what I'm saying? And most of the time, I don't agree with anybody I listen to 100%. Nobody. I don't care who it is. I just don't agree with everything they say. And that's why sometimes some of the stuff I listen to come across as harsh, and people don't, my viewers don't agree with it. And I myself don't agree with all the parts of it, even though I may like the person I'm listening to. But this dude right here, Dr. Amos Wilson, this is the only motherfucker I have not disagreed with, on nothing he said in any of his writings, any of his publications, any of his interviews or his lectures. I cannot disagree with this man, yo. Yo, that's it, bro. Know your enemy. You gotta know how these motherfuckers think. Cause they got plans and agendas. You know what I'm saying? These motherfuckers really think, once again, in the future. 20 years from now. Okay, if we doing this now, how will this affect society in 20 years from now? So if you don't know their agendas, if you don't know their plans, if you don't know what the fuck they got in store for you, I don't give a fuck how much you prepare for. You preparing for a flood, and they planning a goddamn earthquake. You know what I'm saying? You still fucked up. Oh, you preparing for an earthquake, and they planning on sending a goddamn tornado. But you don't know that shit because you ain't been studying they ass. You know what I'm saying? The same way they study you, because they study everybody. That's why they classify your ass as Mongoloid or Negroid or Caucasian, or, you know what I'm saying? That's why they got all these definitions and categorizations and models and shit like that, because they done studied the shit out of your ass. And that's why they come up with schools of thought like psychology and see how the fuck you think. And they study every fucking thing. So if you don't study these motherfuckers, you is ass out. Ass out. Every fucking category: zoology, biology, chemistry, they all study. And they want to know everything. But nobody don't study their ass. You know what I'm saying? Nobody don't ever study them. Know your enemy, man. Know your enemy. I'm trying to figure out what colors I'm gonna use. I'm gonna start out with. I'm gonna need some blanco, some negro. All right, that's the extent of my Spanish. Por favor. All right, I want to start on this background. There's some. I'm gonna use some Naples yellow in there. I see a little bit of some greens, some blues. I want to get like some light greens. My art teacher hates sap green. Lads, don't use sap green. Where are my other greens at? Alright, let's see. Get some greens. Not that Terra Verde. I might oxide green. I don't know. Let's see how these work. Where I want to put you at? Put you here. A little bit of oxide. Some greens and yellows. Of course, there's going to be some whites and grays and blues in there. Some tans. Just try to brighten up this background a little bit, or at least start on it. How long I been here? An hour. I ain't even paint shit yet. Yeah, and we don't think that far into the future. Motherfucker, the average, average man can't even think 5 years down in the future, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I got a cousin, homeschool, you know what I'm saying? She never went no regular high school. Went to, damn, what's the name of that college she went to? Fucking a real prestigious college in Virginia. George Mason University. I think she graduated from George Mason University with like some crazy ass math degree. You know what I'm saying? Want to be like one of them motherfuckers who work for CERN or some shit. But she never went to like regular high school, yo. I got some fucking shit. I'm not even gonna pretend to know what kind of math degree she got, but she got some crazy ass shit, yo. Astrophysics, some shit like that. Nuclear
molecular bio. I don't fucking know what kind of math degree she got, but it's some shit that I can't hardly pronounce. Homeschool, you know. Let me turn this lecture back on. Yo, Grice, you speak a lot of English to say you don't know English. That's pretty good, bro. You must have a translator. You got a translator sitting there with you?
By a social system, whether that system be dyadic, that is a system where there's a relationship between two people, familial or society, then it is reasonable to assume that such a personality, that is a maladjusted personality, is created and maintained because it is needed, because it is essential to the functioning of that system or some segment of that system. The maladjusted personality is created and maintained in service to another. I've often said, of course, one of the problems we have as people is that we are a created people. We are a creation of the Eurocentric Dr. Frankenstein. And we have been created to serve the purpose of Europeans. One of the major goals of an Afrocentric education and of Afrocentric development is that we become self-developed people, that we determine what our personality traits will be, that we determine our destiny and our direction, and not be determined by our reactionary relationship to some other people. Often a maladjusted personality is created and maintained in service to parental and familial self-image, to societal, economic, political values and goals. If the maladjusted personality is a defensive and avoidant one, and such defensive and avoidant tendencies are deemed neurotic, then they are created to defend the individual against neurotic demands and to protect it, to help them avoid a reality that is painful. However, that doesn't mean that the individual is not engaged also in serving the society. Often we look at a neurotic person as a defensive personality, as a personality that is avoidant, that seeks to avoid certain responsibilities and certain reactions and certain realities. We must also see, though, that personality in defending itself, in avoiding certain realities, actually serves another group or another person. I was doing a lecture here on self-hatred. And in the very first lecture, I dealt with the image of the blonde, blue-eyed Jesus. And I made the statement that you had to beware of a church such that when you walk into it, the first thing you see is a blonde, blue-eyed Jesus back behind the altar. That church is lying to you, and that church is going to have send you to hell. How did I say that? Because first of all, there's nowhere in the Bible that a description of that Jesus has ever been given. And secondly, that Bible strictly states that graven images should not be made, and it's done. And one minister jumped up offended because of that statement and took the statement personally. And I'm a minister in a such and such a church, and I took a course under Dr. Cone at Columbia University, and just laid it all out for me, and objected to it as if I were attacking the minister directly, when I was dealing with the concept, and I was dealing with the psychology of having gods painted in alien forms, and how that induces self-hatred and maintains self-hatred in the people. How praying to a white man is damaging to black people, and how thinking of God as a white man is damaging to black people. I'm dealing with the concept here. Yet she felt a need to defend what she thought of as herself and her profession. But in defending herself, she actually defended the system. She actually defended the status quo. And many of us then, as neurotics, you see, as we engage in our neurotic and maladjusted behavior and defend our egos and defend our vanities and defend our prides, actually support and hold up the system. Or justify the abusing family. And how we, in many instances, end up justifying the system that abuses us. Integration itself indicates that, wanting to live and be loved and lay around with people who destroyed us and enslaved us and given us the greatest pain in the world. Sometimes what we call in psychology the love of the aggressor. The people you want to love most are the people who've done the most damage to you. Unhealthy personalities cannot be created by healthy environments. Since the unhealth of an individual or group can result in the relative health, wealth, security, and power and sense of identity of another individual or group, then it serves the interests of the latter group. In other words, the unhealth of the black community serves the health and wealth of the white community. Just as the sickness of the drug addict serves the health and wealth of the pusher. So in a sense then, it becomes in the interest of the pusher to keep the addict, of course, addicted, even though he claims he's doing him a service and a favor. The latter group becomes dependent, that is the unhealthy group, comes to need the unhealthiness, and that is the dominant group really becomes dependent and comes to need the unhealthiness of the former. If the health of the former means a reduction in the dominance of the latter, then the latter will resist the health of the former despite its pretensions to the contrary. In other words, when we even see assimilationism, we don't have time to talk about it here tonight, but in many ways assimilationism and integrationism is really another prompt for the maintenance of white power. And while we thought that we bought it in to a great extent, I would argue that to a good extent the white ruling class helped to push it as well, because it also helps to maintain the white ruling class in power. When you have a minority of people, such as the European, often in order to stay in power, they must recruit from the very people they oppress. And therefore, they will call up from those people certain talented people or other types who then will identify with their masters and help them to maintain the control over the masses. This often will be called integration and will often be called desegregation. But ultimately, if you look very closely, you'll notice one thing, that the real power relationship between those two groups has not changed. I talk about a number of things we call constants. That if we look closely in the relationship, at the relationship between Europeans and Africans, we will...
That man say, who you listening to? That shit sound powerful, don't it? That's some powerful speaking, ain't it? Motherfucker, goddamn. Yeah, my man got it. Dr. Amos Wilson, the man himself.
Note that there are certain basic things that have not changed despite all of the other things we look at. Despite integrationism, despite political and social change, there are things that are still basically the same and have been the same for the last 400 years. The real power of black people, particularly if you talk about military power, has not changed fundamentally since the very time we met the European. You may find African countries now with jet planes and tanks that they bought from Europeans, by the way, and still have yet to make. And you may think then that the Africans have entered into a modern era in warfare and so forth. But I would dare say that there's not a single African country that can really protect the interests of black people against European power, particularly as that power moves out into space and can rain down on the African continent bombs and laser weapons and other weapons of various types. and African countries having no anti-ballistic system, no Star Wars system, no system to fight war in space, is literally defenseless. And yet they may fly the latest American jets, and in the face of American and European war power, we are still ultimately defenseless. That has not changed fundamentally in 400 years, ladies and gentlemen. The European economic control of this globe fundamentally has not changed either. The European control of information has not changed fundamentally either. The European control of definition, the definition of reality, the definition of what is and is not, has not changed fundamentally either. That has been the case for a long time. The European tendency to degrade things African has not changed as well. You may now have a degree in computer technology. You may now have a job that pays you $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, but your fundamental relationship to the European has not changed one whit from the fundamental relationship between our African forefathers and his European slave master. For as you work your computers, you still work to the profits of Europeans.
All the little tabs.
And so the fact that we've moved into the executive offices does not mean we've moved into power. Does not mean that the fundamental power relationship between Europeans and Africans have changed one bit. As a matter of fact,
the only reason these books are in here is because they can't fit on my bookshelf. Like, yo, my bookshelf is literally full to the brim. And this is as far as I've gotten in this book. 342 pages into it so far. This is a long ass book. I still got like 500 and something pages to read, yo. But it's good though. You know what I'm saying? Black American Racial Solidarity and Economic Development. In our discussions of racial solidarity of immigrant groups and the economic growth and opportunities of engenders of them, we do not wish to leave the impression that Black Americans are not capable of having not experienced racial solidarity and the associated economic outcomes. Racial solidarity and self-help have a lengthy history in the Black American community and were particularly intense in the years following Reconstruction. Yeah, because we had Black Wall Street where racial solidarity was at the max, and we had our own economic infrastructure until they came and burnt Black Wall Street down. So there have been plenty of times where we've been able to organize and unify. And these two right here are actually lectures that you can hear. So these weren't exactly meant to be a book. These are transcripts from his lecture series. So somebody took his lectures and wrote them down. So if you've listened to his lectures and they're just this ain't even 200 pages. So it just reads through real easy. You can read right through it, But this was the first book that I got from him, actually. This was the first book I read from Dr. Wilson. The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation. The title was so interesting. I was like, I gotta read that. And yeah. I had those books I got those, I don't know. I think I got Black on Black Violence almost 2 years ago. Blueprint for Black Power is the last book that I got from him. Yeah, I got them off Amazon. Oh, my lady agrees with me on everything. I mean, in the beginning, she couldn't see a lot of shit, but now she sees it, and just how society in general is set up. And we live in an area where the demographics is 97.3% Caucasian. And so when we go out, I mean, she's experienced racism with me. Like, seriously, like blatant racism. Like, this one dude just told this fucking, we was at this party, and I'm the only black person there. Go figure. And this dude just tells, like, this fucking racist ass fucking joke, yo. Cuss his ass out, and I had to leave that shit, you know what I'm saying? Motherfuckers think they overpowered when you by yourself. But I told that motherfucker, man, you say one more fucking word, I'm gonna knock you in your fucking face, yo. I was not playing. And then, there's several other incidents where, like, once again, like, it's weird. Like, I live in this city where almost everywhere I go, like, you can be the only black dude. Like, say if we go out to dinner at Ruby Tuesdays, I'm probably the only black dude in the restaurant. Seriously, it's like that sometimes. I can go shopping at Wegmans. I'm the only black dude in the entire grocery store. And so she notices looks and shit like that. But over the years, I've been able to break shit down to her. You know what I'm saying? She listens. And that's the only reason I'm still with her, you know what I'm saying? You know, she supports me, and she understands, and she tries to help educate white people about white privilege and racism. Yeah, then she's seen that shit. You know what I'm saying? Minding my own business, and she look up. I don't even see the motherfucker, but somebody just staring at me all nasty and shit. Like, what the fuck is this nigga doing in here? And she's like, you know what I'm saying? Or motherfuckers just this. I remember this one time, this dude. I think this motherfucker called me nigga, yo. I couldn't hear that shit. He said something though. We were just coming out of a restaurant. Are we going in a restaurant, and the dude is coming out the restaurant, big fat motherfucker, comes down. He's coming down the stairs, like, and there's enough room for him to, like, go around me. So I'm coming up the stairs, and I'm staring on course, like, bitch, get to the side. I'm not gonna step out of your way and squeeze all the way over to the side just because you want to take up the whole fucking staircase. Like, so I'm walking up, and then he's forced to walk around me. You know what I'm saying? Because I walk my head up, my shoulders back. Like, bitch, I'm an alpha, bitch. You know what I'm saying? He walks around me. Fucking. Oh, what the fuck you say? Okay, come on, babe. Come on. Yeah, bitch, you mad? You mad because you had to get on the other side? Like, bitch, they plenty of room over there. It's just little simple ass shit. A motherfucker trying to bogart a stairwell. I mean, the staircase, like, I don't know. Like I said, what did he say? I don't know what the fuck he said, but I was about to go roll his little pudgy ass over in that parking lot.
Moving of blacks into the executive offices is an effort to maintain that power and to obscure that power behind a form of neocolonialism. I don't think it is an accident that the desegregation movement and the assimilationist movement in America parallel the neocolonial movement in Africa. As I often tell my classes, you as blacks.
Yo, Jamie, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. But watch what you say, because I got my finger on this keyboard right now. I'm about to block the fuck out of you, bro. You see that? Come on. Go ahead with your joke. As soon as you tell that shit, if I don't like that shit, I'm banning your little pussy ass. Go ahead. That shit better be funny, too. That's the crazy part, yo. Like, interracial kids, they get it so hard, yo, because they so confused. Being black is fucking cool, but black got so many negative stereotypes. Being white, you know, they're going to call you nerdy and this, but it comes with more privileges and more advantages and shit if you can act white, especially if you can pass for a white person. And people know that shit. Like, yo, if I could just be white, shit'd be easy for me. I can go in the store with my hands in my pockets. Ain't nobody going to think I'm stealing shit. You know what I'm saying? I go for a goddamn bank loan. I might actually get it. You know, just little shit like that. Just because I look and act white. But if you look and act black, you already know what time it is. What's long, green, slimy, and smells of pork? I don't know, Jamie. You got me on that one. That's fucked up, bro. Oh my god. I'm not gonna ban you for that, but that's fucked up, man. That's fucked up. It is kind of corny, but like, come on, man. It's just the image of that shit. Like, Kermit the Frog here. And, you know. Grice, there you go, speaking more English, man. Hey, I ain't never say all white people bad. I never say that. I say white supremacy is different, man. That's a system. That's a system. Like the steam engine is a closed system, just like the internal combustion engine is a closed system. Now, which one is better? You know what I'm saying? Most people use internal combustion because, you know, steam engine ain't that good, but that's talking about a whole fucking system. You know what I'm saying? I do the parts, the individual parts, probably use most of the same shit. It's still made out of metals and aluminums and steels and shit like that. So the parts ain't bad, you know what I'm saying? But the system, we talking about the system. Now, is every component to the system bad? No. But overall, is the system of white supremacy something very malicious? Yes, it is. You know what I'm saying? Yes, it is. I know lots of people in interracial relationships. My girlfriend is white. My aunt married a white man. My cousin married a white dude. You know what I'm saying? I know, shit, one of my homies I hang with, my man who was on TV with me yesterday. My man Kanye Washington. His wife is white. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not no big deal. It's not a big deal. But when you look at control and power and systematic racism, that's a big deal. You know what I'm saying? And if you're a white person and you don't speak out about systematic racism and institutional racism, then you are racist. Now, if you're a white person and you say, hey, I see the system, I see the construct, I voice this shit, I find ways to engage in conversations to break this system down, you not racist. That's not a racist person. But if you say, you know, Confederate flag, fuck it, who cares? Yeah, vote for Trump, who cares? You know, race, it's not my problem. I don't see color. You know, I choose not to talk about it. Where you're condoning the system. You're silently upholding the system. So I like fucking with white people who know that there is a problem. And they check each other when they see each other still participating in the problem. I like listening to Tim Wise. He's a smart guy. Tim Wise is a smart guy. I like listening to Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott is a smart old lady. I like listening to her. I like listening to people like that. Damn, my kids look Puerto Rican. Well, my son is black, but he got fucking blonde hair and blue eyes. And I got 2 mixed cousins, and one of my girl cousin, she looks like Indian, not like a Native American, but like West Indian. She look Indian, and her brother looks like fucking like he can be Arab or something. This motherfucker, I swear he looks like he can be Arabic, yo. That shit is weird as fuck, yo. You mix with black and white, but you look Indian and you look Arabic. Yeah. That shit. My kids look Puerto Rican. All right, we gonna finish this lecture up. I really gotta paint, guys. I've been here so long and ain't do shit yet.
Students are now being educated to put a black face on white power and to help deceive your people into thinking because you got a job, we have moved forward as a people. Let's then just take a quick look at the functions of maladjustment and why you cannot get blacks, why it is important that blacks never get out of their sickness. You ever wondered why the more social workers you produce, the crazier people get? The more psychologists you produce, the crazier people get. Have you ever wondered about that? I lost a job challenging whites about that. Why you, as a white man, who these crazy people have permitted to be chairman of the department of predominantly Hispanic and black college, why do you as a white man, continue to try to bring these psychologists in here when you know that this psychology is not doing the black and Hispanic community one whit of good? He could not disagree with that. How do you pretend to judge the qualifications of black people for teaching other black people and Hispanic teachers and Hispanic students when you admit every day in the New York educational system that you don't know how to educate black children? We have a group of people who lament about their inability to educate black children. How black children are so-called uncontrollable and ineducable and all of that, and yet they want to sit on a board and determine who is qualified and not qualified. We have this insult downtown where these white dogs are going to try to determine who should be the chancellor of New York City schools, and yet have admitted that they cannot educate black children. And we'll sit there and let them try to lay the foundations and tell us what the credentials of an educator is supposed to be. How do you qualify to tell us what the credentials of an educator is supposed to do? You have not demonstrated that you are capable of educating black people, but yet there are a lot of us who want to sit back and talk about standards and degrees and all this other nonsense that the people who clearly admitted that they failed have laid upon us. And yet we have a lot of this going on in the system. But this kind of stuff must happen if black people are to continue to be subordinated. How is it functional? The captive African maladjustment justifies European dominance and exploitation. Because we are crazy, because we are criminals, because we are addicts, because we are that, the Europeans have a right to put their police in our community. They have a right to run the welfare agencies that keep us crazy, by the way. They have a right to intrude into our cultural families and personal lives. Why? Because, you see, they are maladjusted. They have learning deficiencies. They have this and that. Therefore, we're coming in to help and treat them in some sort of way. We are bringing in foreign aid. We are calling on the IMF to study and regulate their national economies and so forth. So you will see the so-called sickness and dependency and lagging in development and all of these other kinds of things every day are justifications for the Europeans to intrude upon African life and seek to control that life. And when we accept their definitions, we accept their dominance. We ask for their dominance, and we see their dominance as some kind of aid to us. Yet when we look some 40 years later, we are in the same position or in a worse position than before. How do we solve it? Asking more of it. Well, let's get more degrees. Let's see that the teachers get more degrees. Even though the more degrees they get, the worse the education has become. But what's the solution? Send them back to school for some more. The more money that's been pumped into school, what happens? The worse the education has got. What's the solution? Let's put more money into school. Idiotic solutions all over the place. But you see, you cannot expect a neurotic to think normally. That's the essence of being what? Neurotic. If you thought normally, behave normally, you wouldn't be a neurotic, would you? So being maladjusted justifies European dominance, rationalizes Eurocentric treatment, as I just said, of African people, and thereby reduces their guilt and self-condemnatory feelings for behaving toward the African in ways contrary to their stated political and constitutional, ethical, moral, religious principles. You know, these great Christians and these great people who believe in equality. How do you believe in equality? You know, the greatest problem in this country was, how do you believe in the equality of man and yet enslave a group of men? How do you believe in this and mistreat and discriminate? In order to get out of that dilemma, then, you must make those people what? Less than men, less than human. You see? So then in that way you can justify what you do. They're not fully human. They're not fully men. They're not fully intelligent. They're not fully capable of self-government. They're not fully capable of guiding themselves. Therefore, it's only incumbent on us, those of us who are lucky enough to be more intelligent and divinely sent to rule over men, to take care of them. It is incumbent upon us to take up what? The white man's burden, which happens to be the black man. But actually the other way around is we have to carry them as a burden. The maladjustment of black people maintains Eurocentric self-esteem, self-definition and identity, self-concept, sense of security and control, since the captive African's debilitated state, debased and degraded nature will not permit him to successfully overcome such dominance. The lowest European on the lowest street, Skid Row in this country, can always say one thing: at least I'm not black. He defines himself, and his self-esteem still rests upon the ultimate degradation of black people. So no matter how low and evil he sinks, he still has a superiority attitude toward black people. And therefore the degradation of black people and maintaining black people in that state is important to the European sense of self-esteem and self-identity. The European more or less defines himself in contrast to the African person. Many of you have run into Europeans, and when you came to be what they did not expect to be, you've seen them unravel before your very eyes. When they could not play their accustomed role of dominance and mastery, you've seen them become unglued and unable to function, become confused. It means then that our submission and subordination and degradation keeps them together. And therefore it is necessary for them to maintain this degraded state in black people in order to maintain their sense of self as a people. And by maintaining us in this debased state and degraded state, they therefore maintain their security, because as long as we think neurotically and maladjustedly, then we will not be able to think in a way that will ultimately defeat them as a people and ultimately destroy them as a people. And remember, we're talking about people who are a minority in the world, and yet who must protect their interest. Black maladjustment induces the captive African to engage in self-defeating behavior, which relieves the Eurocentric establishment of having to impose direct militaristic oppression and to blame the victim for his own predicament. We get plenty of that, of course. In other words, when you get the black maladjusted to a certain degree, he will defeat himself. Well, look, I put libraries in your community. You just don't like to read. We have schools here. You just like to drop out for some reason. The knowledge is available to you. You just don't like it for some reason or other. It's a very slick system because it permits the European to pretend that they are liberal and open and so forth, and yet at the same time maintain themselves. And of course, I often talk about this. The European talks about freedom of speech. But we are only free to speak when our audience does not hear us. We are only free to speak when our audience is not interested. We are only free to speak when the audience really does not listen. Oh, I can sit here and call Reagan all kind of names and talk about white folk. That illustrates what a great system we have here. But how is this possible? To a good extent, it's possible because, you see, at first you induce the audience not to be what? Interested, not to care or to be apathetic, and then you just let the person speak as long as they want to. You induce the audience not to be active, and therefore knowing that after the speech is over, no real activity will take place, so you let them talk as much as they want to. So the system of slavery, you see, and Jim Crowism that occurred shortly thereafter structured the black personality in such a way that despite the Marcus Garveys and the Malcolm X's and other people, there's been relatively little change because the reception often of the audiences was such that they would not threaten the United States after they heard the speech. We are only free in this country to do the wrong thing. Recognize what happened to Farrakhan. Farrakhan has been saying the same thing for 20 years. But to a good extent, when the...
No, me and my girl live together. There's somebody goes with that. He don't paint white people. Bonkers. Have you been here before, man? Let me find out. Smitty. What the fuck is your name? Werber German? Werben? What? A German Jensen? What the fuck? You see, you got a wee man name, yo. I got this fucking pimple. Shit. Yo, where the weed at? Yo, my man Smitty got some weed. Want me to call him up real quick? Yo, Smitty. My man said, can he get a little something from you? Smitty. From SpongeBob. I don't know what that shit is. German Jutsu? Okay. Alright guys, this lecture is almost over. I'm getting hungry. I gotta get something to eat soon. It's afternoon time. Yeah, it's almost 1 o'clock.
Whites actually thought that black people might really be listening to Farrakhan, might really act upon what Farrakhan was saying. He can't now get into Javits Center. Now he's having a hard time finding a place to speak and a platform to speak to black people. Is this the country of free speech, ladies and gentlemen? You better not believe it. It's no way. We say we are free. What is freedom, we say? Freedom to do what we want to do. But stop a minute and think. What makes you want to do what you want to do? And you might come to realize then that our very wants and our very desires have been what? Induced. So that the things we really want and the things we really desire are those things that maintain the system and are those things that destroy us as a people. But yet we object to anyone speaking about it because we see our indulging in them as some expression of our what? Freedom. Yet in this system, when you so-called let a people free, and yet you must maintain them in subordination, they must then, with their freedom of choice, always choose what? The wrong thing. But you give them a foolish pride into thinking that since they have choice, they are therefore free. A very slick system. It induces the captive African to behave in such a way such that he will economically and otherwise and apparently of his own accord support the European establishment to the detriment of his own without being conscious of his doing so. Why should a black person be made to feel ugly? What is the function of associating blackness and ugliness? Blackness and uncleanliness? Blackness and unlovableness, of being unlovable? Is it just purely a racist attitude of some evil people? What do you do when you feel ugly or unkempt? But you do something else beside that. You go out and you buy yourself a new and spend a lot of money. But what's happening here? Who do you spend it with? Who gets the bulk of the money that's spent? In other words, the African feeling ugly and unclean in his attempt to compensate for that feeling of ugliness and uncleanliness goes to the very person who made him feel that way in the beginning and purchases and buys from that person and therefore maintains the very individual to destroy the self-image to start with. Do you think then an economic system that depends upon a bunch of people trying to compensate for feelings of inferiority by buying brand names? I don't know where brands, you know. By buying names of other people on their clothing? Do you think that system is ever really going to let you out of that feeling of ugliness? It can't. It's economically dependent upon that feeling, ladies and gentlemen. If we were made to feel naturally beautiful, don't you know we would destroy the cosmetics and industry? So we must feel naturally that nature itself has not made us beautiful, so that we must compensate for it. And therefore we can see then that.
So this shit don't make no sense to y'all? I guess y'all not understanding any of this man is saying, right? Right. You make that shit sound plain and understandable, right? I know that shit is weird, like, you know it's there, you know that's how it works, but until somebody really breaks that shit down for you, you like, oh yeah, that's fucked up. Oh, he right. Yeah, he right about that too. Yeah, he right about that. Yeah. Oh man, yeah, it's fucked up, right? Because a motherfucker can explain that shit to you how it really fucking works, yo.
The inducement of inferiority in black people, the inducement of a feeling of ugliness, the inducement of these various negative feelings must stay in black people, so that in trying to compensate for these feelings, black people will economically, politically, and otherwise support the very people that induced them. You see, the alienation of black people is economically functional. It's just not a feeling you have in your mind. The fact that you may wrestle with your own self-estrangement, separation from yourself, is not just a feeling you're having within yourself. It is a politically functional feeling. It is induced for political purposes. What does it mean to be alienated? To be alienated does not only mean that one suffers a split within the personality, that one feels estranged from himself, that one does not know himself. Certainly that's an aspect of alienation, and this is the way it's talked about in the psychology books, you see. And when you read all of this psychology, you think you're really getting heavy, you see, and the Eurocentrics teach it to you very directly, and you feel very profound when you talk about the great dynamics of the head and ego struggling with one another. Why do you alienate a person? We are alienated so that we can serve aliens. That is the function of alienation. Alienation means to be determined by forces outside oneself, other than oneself, to the enhancement of those aliens. When Marx talks about alienation, then do not just cue in on the alienation that the worker feels. Recognize that the worker has to be alienated in order to serve the owner of the means of production. That's its ultimate function. You will recognize then, and alienated people can only spend money with aliens. They can only support aliens. They can sit here and support these Koreans and these Arabs and these Indians and everybody else but a black person. They can support everybody's families but their own. They can give jobs to these people's uncles and aunts and sisters and brothers and children, but they cannot give jobs to their own children. They can feel good when they give all of their money to Bloomingdale's and these other places, but they feel cheated every time they trade with a black person. You have to be alienated for that reason. That's why we alienate. And do you think the white man intends to turn that feeling of alienation loose in your heart? You are dead wrong. No matter how often you go into a boardroom, no matter how high you move up into the white hierarchy, because alienation is functional for white power and functional for white economic, social, and political dominance. And yet I see somebody expressing surprise after 40 years that black children still have a sense of inferiority, because you don't know your black psychology, and because you studied them from a Eurocentric psychological point of view, and because you saw your goal as not removing the white man from power, but of sleeping with them in their beds, and not questioning the evilness of his system, but of wanting to share in it. We never had a national debate. Who gave the NAACP the permission to go out to court and talk for black people in terms of equality? Equality with whom? We should have debated that. That's a moral issue. Equality with the slave master? Equality with exploiters? Equality with people who, every time they stepped on a continent, destroyed and degraded the people that they dealt with? Is this what we want, a sharing of the spoils? Or is it that we want a whole different world than what these people have bought on this earth today? But we were diverted from asking that fundamental question. We were made to think simply because we were getting paid less than white folk, our problem would be solved merely by getting equal pay. But the problem is much deeper than that, ladies and gentlemen. But that too is a part of the illness, you see. So then the maladjustment is used and is induced in the African to engage in self-destructive behavior so that he may annihilate himself, or that his demise can be permitted or enacted without triggering Eurocentric guilt and without costly resistance. It was induced to permit the European to perceive himself as naturally superior, to protect the European from genetic annihilation, While I'm on that subject, let me just mention one quick thing here about genetic annihilation. Some of you saw this, I'm sure. U.S. News and World Report, June 22nd, 1987. What does it say here? Are we having enough babies? You know whose question that could be. Of course, this is a piece done by Ben Wattenberg. Some of you might have seen him at various places, and he's doing a very interesting thing now. He wrote a book called The Birth Dearth, indicating, of course, that not enough white people are being produced in the world. And so he starts here, what's happening today has never happened before. It will dramatically change the U.S. and the world in which we live. Over the years, I've heard businessmen, diplomats, government planners, and parents all begging for the same thing. No surprises, please. This book, a speculation about the future based on current trends, is an attempt to deal with that plan. Forewarned is forearmed. What is happening?
A book speculated on the future based on current trends. They always thinking into the future, yo. Always thinking about the future.
Is this the same thing? So he wrote a book called The Birth Dearth, indicating, of course, that not enough white people are being produced in the world. And so he starts here, what's happening today has never happened before. It will dramatically change the U.S. and the world in which we live. Over the years, I've heard businessmen, diplomats, government planners, and parents all begging for the same thing. No surprises, please. This book, a speculation about the future based on current trends, is an attempt to deal with that plan. Forewarned is forearmed. What is happening is this. For about a decade and a half, the peoples of the free, modern, industrial world, that includes the U.S., have not born enough children to reproduce themselves over an extended period of time. We had a baby boom. Now there is a birth dearth. I believe that the birth dearth will, in the near future, begin to cause turbulence at every level of our economy. I believe, too, that the birth dearth will leave in its wake tens of millions of unhappy adults who will end up with no children at all, or fewer children than they really wanted, or no grandchildren, or fewer grandchildren than they had hoped for. I believe the demographic and immigration patterns inherent in the birth dearth will yield an even smaller proportion of white European stock. This will likely cause more ethnic and racial tension and turmoil than otherwise would occur. That's what you see. People concerned with what? Their genes, maintaining their ethnicity, seeing it as an important factor, not trying to obliterate it the way we and our assimilationist people have tried to do, not trying to forget who they are, but trying to hold on to their identity. This is one of the challenges of Afrocentric education, by the way. And one of the things that we have to look at, what would happen if these Europeans begin to disappear from the face of the earth? What will happen if they decide that they are not going to disappear and want to make some other people disappear? How are they going to deal with their low birth rate? What are the political implications about that situation? It has very serious implications for African people. And these people are now getting ready to deal with it. I believe further, he says, that the birth dearth may well turn out to be of great harm to the broadest value we treasure. It will make it difficult to promote and defend liberty in Western nations and the rest of the modernized world. Talking about white folk, certainly could be talking about us in terms of liberty. Primacy and prosperity. And he's talking about here, we live in a community of free and modern nations banded together in a loose but real alliance. These nations like to argue. They argue about strategic defense, about who will buy cars from whom, and about whose wine shall be subject to what countervailing duties. But beneath the bickering, something remarkable has happened during the last four decades. This community of free modern nations has shaped and molded the nature of the entire world. A direct admission of their role in the world, you see. We've shaped and what? Created the world. Now that is being what? Threatened. And what are we going to do about maintaining it? You think that these people are going to let you free? You got another thought coming. Economically, technologically, culturally, geopolitically, and in many ways militarily as well. In other words, we've shaped it militarily as well. It's interesting sometimes when I see the Europeans talk about their boys being killed, and of course I was being killed along with them. They talk about gets being robbed and others being robbed. But remember one thing, if you're being held up out there in the streets by knife or gun, it's a gun you sold to them. And if black boys and white boys are being killed in Southeast Asia, 9 times out of 10, they are killed by weapons sold to the very people that are killing them. Ye that what lives by the sword shall what? Die by it. You think you can go around the world selling billions and millions of dollars of jet planes and weapons and not yourself ultimately be victimized by the very things you sell? These sellers of death will ultimately be the main victims of their own tools of death. By 1950, when this Western moment was in its early days, the population of the free modern world comprised about 22% of the global population. That's amazing even at that, isn't it? That 22% of the population could have control over another, 88%. Today we are 15%. By the year 2030, we will be 9%. A reasonable extrapolation to the end of the next century brings the Western proportion down to about what? 5%. But we still want to be in control. A question arises, will our values continue to dominate in a world where our population shrinks to 9%, shrinks to 5%, even lower? And he goes on to talk about population and power. Can you see again? Let's look up. I hope I'm not holding you up too long. I'll be too short. I just want to make a few other quotes from this. What happens when the West is less than 10% of the world, less than 5%? Do mere numbers of people equate with power and influence? Consider first the military situation. There are populous nations that are not big powers, China and India, but only populous nations can become big powers. The United States and the Soviet Union. The advantage of a large labor force and economies of scale are of vast importance. Brute economic production is one critical aspect of national strength and security. Larger populations can build more easily the infrastructure that supports national defense. And attaining technological leadership requires a large critical mass of scientists. Can we begin to see now why you cannot produce a large number of black engineers and technological people? Why the African world must remain ununited and disunited? Because these people recognize quite clearly that uniting of African people, the social organization of African people, the social and economic networking of African people spells the end of European power and dominance. It's stated right here that, do you ever think, and I know it must amaze you at times, of the influence that Jewish people have in the world. I read with great dismay here about 2 weeks ago the demands that they were laying on the Pope, and how they had the Pope going. It's an interesting situation. And yet you think about it, there are only about, 15 million of them in the world? Maybe even less. And yet, there's a major Jewish political organization in Washington that literally vetoes everything that the United States government does. That the United States budget itself is submitted to this organization, that this organization literally determines who and what nations and what groups will get what from this United States, even though this group is less than 3% of the United States population, ladies and gentlemen. It's an amazing situation there. Here are a people, population-wise, are smaller than a gnat. When you compare them with something like, 400 million or more African people, or more than 500 million Indian people, more than about 1 billion Chinese, and you can name one major population after another, and yet these billions somehow are unable to control their circumstances, and a tiny little group is able to literally manipulate this country and influence what goes on in the world. Reminds me of something some of you read today in today's New York Times. You heard about Mr. Le Pen over there in France, running for office, very famous because he wants to run the Africans and the Asians out of France. Wasn't doing too bad either. Jean-Marie Le Pen, France's leading far-right politician and candidate for the French presidency, has caused an uproar with the statement that the Nazi gas chambers were a minor point of history. No problem until he mentioned that. Several political figures said that they would even vote to lift Mr. Le Pen's parliamentary immunity so that a defamation lawsuit could be brought against him. Political analysts and politicians said this was the first major slip, note that this first major slip, by Mr. Le Pen, whose political campaign focuses on reducing the number of Africans, African Asians, and Arab immigrants to keep France French. So that wasn't his first major slip. It was only when he related to the Jews that he really made it, and that really cooked his goose. As long as he inveighed against Africans and others, as long as he talked about keeping them out and denying them, no problem. As a matter of fact, he was ascending in French politics. As long as he wanted to keep French, all of France, French, and all of that, no problem. No major issue. I mean, no major slip. But as soon as he said this business about the gas chambers and how Jews were executed might be a minor point in history, he was in serious trouble. This is the first major mistake Mr. Le Pen is committed, because these ideas that everyone thought, these are the ideas that everyone thought were dead. Political analysts also said Mr. Le Pen's remarks would probably make it harder for Mr. Chirac's coalition to agree to cooperate with Mr. Le Pen to help defeat the Socialist Party in next year's election. In other words, you see, you can help determine the shape of our government as long as you stay off the large majorities in the world. And just stay off of the what? The minority, the true minority in the world. As long as you can defame black people and African people, you can help determine the shape of the European government, of the French government. But as soon as you then talk about a very small minority in the world, you have made a major, major misstep, and you will pay for it. A very interesting kind of situation there. However, despite all of this, they ultimately recognize that if large populations were truly to unite and were truly to develop a national consciousness, were truly to approach the world in terms of cultural and nationalistic interests, they recognize ultimately then the power would have to shift. And of course we know then that is one of the major reasons why the European must minorize large groups of people and must make people who are ethnically the same think of themselves as being ethnically different. On a larger consumer market, only a larger consumer market can support much broad-based industrial scientific innovation, which often spins off into the military field. And he goes on and talks about, later on he talks about, and culture counts. Values count. If the peoples of the world admire Western values and seek to adopt them, we are what? Stronger and safer. So you think then, with this kind of attitude, that African values will be permitted to flourish among African people if we leave it up to them to determine what values are there? There is another to be poor. Blacks and Hispanics have higher fertility rates than whites, although middle-class blacks have lower fertility rates than middle-class whites. Very interesting situation there as well. Have we, as black people, been so concerned with living in the European lifestyle that we've given up reproduction? No. Yet, many of us who are in the so-called middle class have done exactly that. This situation also illustrates the very deadly nature of European society and its very opposition to African values. You must recognize when you read Freudian psychology, at the bottom of that psychology is a critique of European society. A society that comes to hate sex. A society that sees sexuality as its enemy, as in opposition to civilization. A society that denies its gods sex and sexuality. is a society ultimately that's going to be a deadly one. How can you have fear and hatred and antipathy toward the very source of life and not ultimately side with death itself? And I think one of the major reasons this society has become deadly and a threat to the life of the very world itself is that it has problems with its own sexuality. And it has problems with the very basic nature of man. It has such a problem then that those who have the most to give to children, you would think, in terms of wealth, knowledge, and so forth, are the very ones that what? Do not have them. There's a problem there, ladies and gentlemen. And it's interesting to note then that this is diametrically opposed to the African sense and to African values that look at life and growth and development as a great value. But yet we note as African adopts these European values, they will also adopt the deadly nature of Europeans to the point often of killing their own children or denying them birth or denying them conception in the first place. And now the European is beginning to see the result of the philosophy that they have put forth. What happens in America? He goes, and it's interesting to note that this is one of the challenges. Further, recent immigrants have higher fertility rates than other Americans. By the way, some of you might have read 2 or 3 years ago about the browning of America. The idea that the Hispanics are moving in so rapidly that at the rate they're going, they'll soon be America's largest minority. There will be more Hispanics in this country than blacks. And that at the rate they're going, we'll literally have a brown America. That's a major question we have to deal with too, ladies and gentlemen, by the way. What will happen to the black population in this country as it is outnumbered by the Hispanic population? Or as it is balanced off by Asian immigration? That's a challenge that our children must be educated to meet. I know it's a question we hate to deal with. And often we want to lump a lot of problems on the white and non-white, forgetting, though, that we as people have to compete against all people on this earth. Africa has to compete against Latin America as well for markets in this United States and other places. And we have to compete with other non-white people. And the idea then, and we just cannot let then other non-white people just function the way they want to without also looking at it in terms of what it means in terms of our own self-development, growth, and survival as a people. The influx then of Hispanics in this family, in this country, will have a major impact upon the quality of black life in this country. And I think those of you who, of course, go into black community can already see that. Those of you who may go to Miami can already see it in very clear terms. And in certain parts of New Jersey can see it. And yet it's an issue that we don't want to face. The rate is less than that if illegal immigrants are counted. That and let me go back. Today, fewer than 20% of legal immigrants to America are of white European stock. The rate is even less than that if illegal immigrants are counted in. There is little reason to think this will change. Birth rates in Western Europe are so low these days, there's hardly anyone left to leave. In other words, there are hardly any whites to come over anymore. Today, about 80% of the current total United States population is of white European stock. At roughly current rates of fertility and immigration, demographers Leon have projected that by the year 2080, the white European share of the U.S. population will be down to 60% and will be shrinking. With a higher rate of immigration, it will only be 50%. Very interesting. Reminds me of that movie, War of the Worlds, you know, when it looked like the aliens were taking over and then they died because of disease. Will the European die out? Will our problem be solved by their mere death? Well, we may take some pride in that if they don't increase the rate of babies they're having. We may be faced with another problem, though. Are we to get the European off of our backs only to have the Asian and others on our backs? So the idea that the European may die away or fade away should not give us too much relief, because we are still faced with the challenge of other groups exploiting us as well. What happens in America with birth dearth conditions under these scenarios? I think it will yield some unnecessary social turbulence.
Dr. Amos Wilson, but I would like to give a brief synopsis of his disposition. Number one, Dr. Amos Lee.
Alright guys, I'm about to get out of here for a while. About to go grab me some lunch. And then I gotta mail this drawing off. But I'll definitely be back in here later on today. My last day off, I got work tomorrow, so I definitely want to get some more painting in today. I'm gonna just continue to try to flesh out this background, get some of these colors in there. Start getting all those shadows and everything looking nice. Alright, yeah, that's it. That's gonna be it for me for a while. Let me see. I don't know why my Wi-Fi was fucking up, man. My Bluetooth was fucking up earlier. I couldn't get shit to work right for a minute. And I had to soldier through that shit though, figure out the easy routes to take. I'm about to go eat some lunch, play some video games, and run a couple errands, and I'll holler at you guys later on. Peace. Until next time.